Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Jenny Wakefield is an inspiration. Alcohol brought her to her knees and nearly to her death, but her will to live triumphed, and she has completely remade her life. In this podcast, we talk about her remarkable journey and the power of gratitude to bring peace and perspective to our daily lives. Jenny, I'd like to welcome you to Bump in the Road, and if you would, tell our listeners your story.
Thank you so much, Pat. So my name is Jenny, and I say so much. My name is Jenny, and I'm an alcoholic because that's how, in my story of recovery, I introduced myself today in my recovery meetings. But I didn't ever think that I would become an alcoholic. Nobody sets out to say, when I grow up, I'm going to be an alcoholic, right? It's not on anybody's agenda. At least I don't think it is. I grew up, I'm from Miami, Florida. I grew up in a pretty, I would say, middle class, normal family, if you can call it any family normal, but, had all family provided for me. There was no any kind of abuse or anything like that. But I could say from a very early age, I felt some kind of a hole. I did not like who I was. And, I can remember, I have this vivid memory. By all accounts and purposes, if you looked at me on the outside, you would think this girl has a lot. I was captain of the cheerleaders at high school. I was editor of the yearbook. I had good grades. Everything on the outside looked good, but everything on the inside just wasn't. And I have this vivid memory of looking down at my legs in high school and saying, God, you're so fat. You're just so ugly. Everybody knows that you're a fraud. Somebody's going to find out that you're not that great. And it really messed with me. And I was very shy, even though being a cheerleader, I was very shy, didn't have a boyfriend, very, I would say, socially inward. But I did my best. And when I went to a party my senior year of high school, I was a very, what you would call, good girl growing up. I didn't party. I didn't go out. I worked. I got my good grades and all that. But I discovered alcohol my senior year of high school. I was at a work party. Somebody gave me a drink. And I remember feeling just this warmth and this sense of relief that this is it, and all of a sudden I could talk to people. I didn't hate myself. That voice in my head that says you're not enough quieted down, and that was it for me. I would say that I went to school. I went to Florida State University. And I felt like I did all the same things that all the people my age were doing. We went to parties. We studied. We went to parties. Work hard, play hard. But what I did notice looking back is that I was starting to get in trouble pretty early. I thought everybody drank like I did, that you would go to parties, you would drink, you would black out, and the next day you would all kind of laugh about it. And that kind of happened for a while. But then through college, nobody that I was hanging out with had consequences like I did, dropping out of school for a while because I couldn't go to classes, or just sleeping all day, just clear signs of depression. But this is back in the 90s, and we didn't talk about it the way that we do today. Sleeping all day. Somehow I still managed to graduate, though. And I think the things that it almost was like a disadvantage that I graduated, that I didn't get a severe enough consequence, but that I was smart enough in school that I didn't have to attend class very much, and the consequence of drinking didn't really hit me yet. So I graduated, became a registered nurse, started working, but the drinking just kept increasing. And I kind of knew in the back of my mind that I was in trouble, but I didn't quite know what I was going to do about it, and I wasn't really ready to stop because I was so bad. I finally found something that made me feel like I fit in. And if it was going to be taken away, that was just terrifying to me. That was my crutch. That was what I needed. And, what I will say is that everything I thought I could get from alcohol was taken away from me. I ended up getting married, drinking to keep my husband, I thought, because my husband at the time wanted to drink. But we ended up getting divorced initially I would blame him for that, but really I just wanted to drink, and I couldn't put anything before alcoholism. My family, my husband, my friends. I just all of those things just started to go away. Fast forward to 2010. I'm living in my parents' house again in my 30s in Colorado, and I go in and out of treatment, and I just can't get sober. I can't stay with it. And really, the recurring theme was nobody's going to want to be around you if you can't be normal and you can't fit in. That this recurring theme of you can't fit in has permeated most of my life. And so I would drink to look normal, and I would drink to keep friends, but it always had the opposite effect and landed me towards the end of my drinking in hospital after hospital. For me, I'm not one of those people that if you drink, you might not know that I'm drinking. It's very obvious. I just disappear. I end up in a hospital. A few times I woke up with a breathing tube down my throat because I had stopped breathing. And it's scary because I didn't set out to do that, but you get into these blackouts that I've now discovered are part of a lot of alcoholics' story. You get into these blackouts and you don't really realize how much you're drinking, and you get the alcohol poisoning. So this just kept happening to me over and over again, to the point where I had nowhere to live. I was homeless and ended up in a homeless shelter in South Florida. And that was terrifying. I'm super grateful today for the shelter. However, it was a very scary place to be. And you would think, landing in a homeless shelter would be it for me. Like, that's it. I got to get my act together. But going down that low and still feeling like you don't fit in, and that maybe the shame, I've gone too far. How did this happen to me, right? I'm a nice girl. I grew up nice. I'm educated. I take care of others as a nurse. All of these things. I couldn't do any of those things now. But when you are consumed by alcohol and you have no tools to get sober, all of that just goes out the window. It just does. And all I could think about was just calming those shameful voices in my head.
What led to your moving into the homeless shelter?
I ended up in a hospital, and I could not. It's somewhere in South Florida. It's funny. I still don't know where that hospital was to this day because it was just another hospital. And they had said, we're going to send you to treatment, but they actually sent me to a homeless shelter because I had been evicted from the apartment I lived in. I had no money. I couldn't pay any of my bills, including my hospital bills. So they treated me like indigent care. And their form of treatment for the indigent care at that time was a homeless shelter. And I realized that this is really just kind of dumping me onto somebody else's hands. And I had nowhere to go. I had nobody else that was kind of willing to take me in. And so I had to live that way for a while. Gratefully, not for too long, but for a while. And I thought, like I said, being homeless, and like, you would be in the shelter, but you'd have to be on the streets during the day. You couldn't be in the shelter all day. You had to be doing God knows what. So you'd just be sleeping on the beach or walking aimlessly. And I just remember thinking, I don't think I can get out of this. I don't know how I'm going to get out of this. So I actually ended up breaking out of that homeless shelter, or like just leaving, like, I'm not going to do this. I'll find somebody who will take me in. Um, Getting drunk again for the last time. That was my last drunk back in 2012, and ending up in another hospital. So my last hospital, hopefully, woke up. They were detoxing me from alcohol, and I had been out of it for a few days, but one of the next to the last day, they were like, "We're going to discharge you tomorrow," and I had nowhere to go, and I was terrified, because I didn't want to go back into that life. I knew that much, right? I don't want to. This is not what I want, but I didn't really know how to get out of it. And so in that hospital bed in South Florida, I said, God, please kill me or help me. I can't do this anymore. And I don't want to say that this big beam of light came down or anything like that. But as they call it in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, that was me taking step one and surrendering. Like, I can't do this anymore. So my bottom wasn't almost dying in a hospital or being homeless on the streets. My bottom was I couldn't do one more day of this kind of life. And I didn't have any other plan Bs to go to. The family was done. The friends were done, if I had any friends. And I finally realized that. And, I have this story. You would think that being in that situation might make me want to die or something like that. But the truth is, back up a few years, I remember thinking one day, I'm just gonna drink and hopefully I'll die. And I ended up I'll keep saying in a hospital. I ended up in a hospital, and I was so mad that I was alive at that point. And I said, "Who called 911 on me?" Because I checked into a hotel to just basically drink myself to death. They said, "You called 911 on yourself." And I thought that was so profound, and that stuck with me up until the point I got sober. Because I was like, that Jenny, I can't believe she. Why did you? And what it told me, though, is that even on the outside, or the onion layers on the outside that tell you you're not enough, you should die, all these things, there was something in my core that said, I don't want you to die. You want to live. I still knew at that point that I had the will to live. And that is, I think, what got me to the surrender point a few years later. And so I was just really super, not grateful in the moment. Gratitude comes sometimes retrospectively. Sometimes it does come in the moment, but sometimes it comes retrospectively. But I was really grateful, especially to this day, to know that even if I'm going through hard times in sobriety, I still want to make it. I'm not going anywhere, and that helps me a lot. So in that moment that I surrendered in that hospital, I had gotten a call from my mother, and she said, "I will. You can't come here, but I will help you find a sober living house, and if you make it, then we can still have a relationship. If you go and you do what you're supposed to do, and if you don't, then we're done." And so I moved into this sober living house in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Did not knew of Deerfield Beach, didn't know anybody. I did have a car that was filled with all of the clothes that I owned on my back that were dirty and gross. I had 3 tires that were halfway deflated and 1 donut tire. And I drove about 50 miles on that car to that sober living house. And it was terrifying. I was the oldest one there. It was mostly a bunch of teenage girls that their parents had put them into treatment. People were using and drinking all around me. I cried every day. every day, sometimes all day. But it was just something had changed in me slightly to say you gotta figure out a way to fix your life. And so I found the local AA room, and I went to meetings all the time. And I had been exposed to AA in the past because I had tried to get sober in the past, but never really wanted to do the whole deal, right? Okay, I'll go to meetings, but I'm not getting a sponsor, or I'm not going to do these steps, or I'll do this step, but not this step, And this time around, I said, I'm just going to do what people tell me to do. And I started going to meetings, got a sponsor, started working the steps. It sounds very cliche, but it's really what happened to me. If they told me to get on my knees at night, I did. And if they told me to, walking through the steps to write down the things that are keeping me from evolving out of shame, or you write down a list of what you're afraid of, what you're resentful for, who you've hurt, and then you take that list and you find out what things inside of you are maybe your defects of character that you need to work on. Are you selfish, self-centered? Do you tend to do these things? And I was willing to hear that about myself. I'm willing to do that work. And then you make those amends to people, and then you bring the program to others, and helping others is a huge part of recovery. And, slowly I started to make steps. I got my job back, the job that I had disappeared on 3 times. I got my job back finally, and I worked hard at it, and I showed up, and I was accountable. And sometimes I didn't want to be, but I knew that that was the next right thing to do, to always do the next right thing, And the next right thing in the beginning was very simple. The next right thing when I first got sober was take a shower, go for a walk. And that sounds really easy, but it's really hard when you're getting sober. And I would do those things, and I swore to myself, I'm going to do one thing every day that's going to make my life a little bit better. And so that's what I did. If I could take it in piecemeal like that, it was manageable. And so I did that. And the days started adding up. And the job I had led to a better job. And that job eventually led to a better job and had me moving out here to Arizona from Florida. And all while working the program. Relationships come back. People come back. And my spirituality is extremely important to me. I've always had like a connection to something greater than myself. I wouldn't say it was religious, but I've always felt something higher than me around, especially in those dark moments. But that presence would make itself known to me. I have this story where, my first year of sobriety, I fell into running. I say sometimes I ran my way through my first year of sobriety. I just decided I'm going to run. And that's a great form, prayer and meditation is part of recovery. That was a great form of meditation for me. And so I started running half marathons, full marathons. And I said, I'm going to run a half marathon every month for a while, at least for a year. And in my 9th month of sobriety, I ran a race in Florida. And it was a half marathon. And I got to a bridge at mile 9, and I ran over it. And then when I got to the other end of the bridge, I had this overwhelming feeling of just emotion and gratitude. And I dropped to my knees because I really realized that I used to sleep under that bridge when I was homeless. And talk about crossing that bridge, right? If that's not a metaphor, I don't know what is. And I was just like, thank you, God. And what it told me is I'm going to cross more bridges. I'm going to go back to places that I swore I could never go back to because of the embarrassment I get caused to myself or others, the pain that I caused to other people. And I'm going to try to cross that bridge in those areas. So like the job that I got back after disappearing a few times, I crossed that bridge to become become a good citizen, a good employee, a good worker, reliable, accountable. And then I was able to repay them by bringing them future business with my new job. And really taking the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous into not only my personal life but into my professional life. I don't openly say in my work that I'm an alcoholic, but if somebody needs to know it, I'm there, and I'm there as a resource or a source of support. It's funny, sometimes I'll put things on presentations or that might be spiritually based. And somebody's like, "Wow, that's really intuitive," and I'm thinking in my head, "That's Alcoholics Anonymous," you know. But it's a way of living. They call it a design for living, and it's a way. It saved my life, but it also gave me life. And the things that the things that I thought I wanted, just to have a good 9 to 5 job and maybe somebody who liked having me around, have been paid back tenfold. I have an amazing career today that I enjoy, that I think I can bring a good human empathetic approach to, because I can definitely have compassion for people who, we all have these walls, these veils in front of us, of especially in business and professional life, but that what's really going on behind that, what's really causing the behavior that we're seeing right now, and talking to people, not in a judgmental way, but in a, like, I get it, I've been there kind of way. But it's funny, because even in sobriety, I'll have 10 years of sobriety in January, which is incredible. But even in that, those what we call the isms can still come in. The I'm not good enough. Somebody's going to find out that, I used to say I play a nurse. I'm not a nurse, but I play one on TV, even though I'm a very accomplished registered nurse. And so I still have to fight those battles, sometimes big, sometimes small. But the difference is really having a connection with something bigger than myself spiritually, and also having a support network around me of people who get what I'm saying, who kind of speak my language. And I'm so grateful today because I've lost the shame. I'm not ashamed to be a woman in recovery. I'm proud of it. I'm a proud member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a great I shouldn't say great. I'm a good wife. I'm remarried. Have a fantastic husband who's very supportive. I strive to be a good wife, a good sister to my brother who supported me and helped me through all of these years. I put my family through a lot. A good daughter to my mother and to my father, who just recently passed away. Him passing away last year was extremely hard on me. But he passed away, I think, knowing that I was sober and that I was going to be okay. And he came to visit me right before he died. He died 2 weeks after he visited me last year. And I think he came to kind of say goodbye in some kind of a way. But I think he also wanted to see me. They live in Colorado. I think he wanted to see that I was living okay. And he used to say to me all the time, "I'm so proud of you." And that wasn't the case before. My parents, my brother, my friends, they all thought I was going to die. It's funny, when I went to have a discussion with the board of nursing years ago when I first got sober, to say, I'm working a sobriety program, this is what I'm doing. And one of them came up to me and gave me a huge hug and said, one of the facilitators of nursing support groups in the state of Florida said, "We thought you were going to die. We're so happy to see you." And I truly believe that if you really are willing, and you're willing to kind of do what others suggest that worked for them, and accept some kind of spiritual gratitude and help, that anybody can come out of this. Because I wasn't supposed to, and I did. And I continue to work my sobriety program today. my job, my family, all of that, super important to me. But my recovery comes first, because if I drink, and I hope I never do again, but if I do, everything is gone. And I have a lot to give to the world. I sometimes don't believe that. I find like I have two sides, like you're awesome, you're not so awesome, and or you're not worth anything and you're awesome, and they fight sometimes. But that story of that hotel where I called 911 on myself tells me that I still want to live, and I have a lot to offer the world.
Want to hear more of the conversation? Sign up at bumpintheroad.us as a Bump 2 subscriber. Buy us a cup of coffee. You can give it a go for free. Just use the code FREEMONTH. And thank you for listening today. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life.